She solved a puzzle in 10 seconds that stumped scientists for 10 years. And when she did, a billionaire's face went pale. But here's what nobody knew. Sarah wasn't supposed to be in that room. She wasn't supposed to be smart. She was just supposed to bring the coffee and disappear. So when she cracked the code that was designed to be impossible, she didn't just solve a puzzle. She exposed a lie the whole world believed. This is the story of the woman nobody saw coming. And by the end, you'll understand why one moment of brilliance can tear down an entire system. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about genius. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. Let me tell you about someone the world completely missed. Her name was Sarah. For 5 long years, Sarah wiped down tables at a small restaurant in downtown Chicago. She knew every scratch on the wooden counter, every stain on the floor tiles, every face that walked through that door. But here's the thing, nobody knew her. Not really. She was the woman who brought your coffee. The one who smiled and disappeared. The one you never remembered, even though she remembered everything about you. Sarah had gotten used to being invisible. In some ways, it felt safer that way. Safer than being seen and judged. Safer than hoping for something more and being disappointed again. Every single morning at 8 o'clock, a man walked into that restaurant. His name was Daniel Preston, and he was rich. Not just comfortable, billionaire rich. Italian shoes. Custom suits. A watch that probably cost more than Sarah's entire year of rent. But Daniel never ordered anything. His drink was already waiting for him before he even sat down. The manager made sure of that. What caught everyone's attention wasn't Daniel himself. It was what he brought with him every day. Some kind of strange device. A puzzle. It looked different every time. Sometimes like a metal cube, sometimes like a screen with cascading numbers. Complex. Mysterious. Impossible. And Daniel would sit there for hours, just studying it, like the rest of the world didn't exist. Sarah watched him. She couldn't help it. She watched the way people would approach his table, confident and eager. Students from nearby universities. Retired professors. Chess champions. They all wanted to try solving his puzzle. And they all failed. One day, Sarah asked her coworker about him. Who is that man? Her coworker rolled her eyes. He owns this building. Tech billionaire. Genius type. Kind of weird, if you ask me. Sarah learned that Daniel paid $100 to anyone who tried his puzzles. But the real prize was bigger. Rumor had it he was searching for someone brilliant enough to be his partner. Someone to share his empire with. Every day, Sarah watched brilliant people fail. And every day, she felt something stir inside her. A memory of who she used to be. You see, Sarah hadn't always been a waitress. As a child, she saw the world differently. Numbers spoke to her like music. Patterns revealed themselves to her like secrets. She was the kind of kid who could solve complex math problems in her head, while other kids struggled with basic addition. But then life happened. When Sarah was 16, her father died in a workplace accident. The company never paid what they promised. Her mother, already fragile, fell apart completely. Sarah had to drop out of school. She started working, cleaning bathrooms, washing dishes, whatever kept the lights on. The girl who once dreamed in equations became a woman who counted tips and worried about rent. She packed away her notebooks, her dreams, her brilliant mind. She told herself it didn't matter anymore. Nobody was looking for genius in a place like this anyway. But here's what Sarah didn't know. Everything was about to change. One Thursday morning, the restaurant was busier than usual. Sarah was rushing between tables, balancing trays, refilling coffee cups. She was exhausted. Her feet hurt. She wanted to go home. Then she heard something that made her stop cold. $200,000, Daniel said clearly. To whoever can solve this one. The entire restaurant went silent. Phones were lowered. Conversations stopped. Even the cook poked his head out from the kitchen. Whatever puzzle Daniel had brought today, it was serious. Sarah looked at his table. The device was spinning slowly, a 3-dimensional maze with glowing panels and rotating lights. It looked impossibly complicated. But something about it felt familiar. Her hands started trembling. Her heart pounded. Before she could stop herself, before fear could hold her back, Sarah stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Can I try?" Daniel looked up at her for the first time. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, the stained apron, the worn shoes, the tired face. His expression said everything. "You? Really? You sure you know what you're asking? He said, half smiling, like it was a joke. Sarah nodded, even though her whole body was screaming at her to walk away. Daniel slid the puzzle across the table toward her. You have 1 minute. Sarah's eyes focused on the device. The lights. The patterns. The way the pieces moved. Her fingers hovered over it, then moved with certainty. Click. 10 seconds. That's all it took. The device unlocked with a soft chime. The restaurant fell into complete silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Daniel just stared. His brain couldn't process what had just happened. Sarah stepped back. Her hands felt cold. Her heart was racing. Who are you? Daniel finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away. But in that moment, Sarah wasn't invisible anymore. For 5 years, she had been a ghost in that restaurant. For 5 years, she had been overlooked, underestimated, forgotten. But in 10 seconds, she had shattered everything Daniel thought he knew about intelligence, about genius, about who deserved to be seen. My name is Sarah, she said simply. I work here. And that's where our story really begins. Because sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones we walk past every single day without ever seeing. Sometimes genius is serving you coffee. Sometimes brilliance is wiping down your table. Sometimes the person who will change everything is the one nobody bothered to notice. The silence in that restaurant felt like it lasted forever. People were staring. Phones were out recording. Sarah could feel dozens of eyes on her, and it made her skin crawl. Daniel kept looking at the unlocked puzzle, then back at Sarah, like he was trying to solve a different kind of mystery. Have you seen this before? He asked, his voice sharp. No, Sarah answered honestly. He leaned forward, fingers pressed together. That wasn't just luck. That puzzle is based on military encryption from the 1990s. It has trillions of possible combinations. People have studied it for months and failed. Sarah said nothing. She just looked at him with tired eyes. The kind of tired that comes from years of being told you're not enough. He leaned back and smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who needed to prove he was still smarter than you. Must have been luck, he said. Or someone coached you. Those words hit Sarah like a slap across the face. Her cheeks burned. You watched me touch it for the first time, she said quietly. If it was luck, maybe it's not as hard as you think. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his leather bag and pulled out another device. Smaller, more complex, even more intimidating. He placed it in front of her like a challenge. Solve this one, he said. If you do, I'll give you the 200,000 right now. Sarah hesitated. The whole restaurant was watching. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about something deeper. This was about all the times she'd been invisible. All the times she'd been passed over. All the years she'd hidden her brilliance because the world wasn't looking for it in someone like her. She sat down, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. Then she touched the device. She listened to it, watched how it moved, followed the pattern, the rhythm, the logic. 30 seconds later, click. The device unlocked. Daniel froze. This isn't possible, he muttered. And yet, Sarah said calmly, here we are. He stared at the device like it had betrayed him, like reality itself had glitched. Who taught you this? He demanded. No one, Sarah said. I just see patterns. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. The arrogance drained from his face, replaced by something else. Confusion. Fear. Maybe even respect. Where did you study? He finally asked. Sarah looked down. I never went to college. My family couldn't afford it. And then life happened. Daniel went quiet. Really quiet. For the first time, he looked at her like she was a real person, not just a waitress, not just someone beneath him. He snapped his fingers. A security guard approached. Take the device to the car, he said. Then, turning back to Sarah, get back to work. We'll talk later. Sarah stared at him for a moment. Then she picked up a nearby tray and walked away. But something had changed. She walked differently now. Her back was straight. Her steps were steady. That day, Sarah carried something heavier than plates. She carried dignity. And for the first time in years, she felt like herself again. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept replaying everything in her mind. The puzzle. The silence. Daniel's face. But what haunted her most was the fear she'd seen in his eyes. He wasn't just surprised. He was shaken, like something fundamental had cracked inside him. She pulled out an old notebook from under her bed. The pages were filled with equations, patterns, diagrams, remnants of a past life she'd tried to forget. As a child, numbers had been her language. She could see their rhythm like music. But when her father died and her world collapsed, she'd put all of that away. She'd hidden her gifts because survival mattered more than dreams. The next morning, the restaurant was packed. But people weren't there for breakfast. They were there for her. Phones were pointed in her direction like she was a celebrity. Some people smiled. Some whispered. Some just stared. At 8 o'clock sharp, Daniel returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 men in expensive suits followed him. One carried a folder. The other had the cold, calculating look of someone used to being the smartest person in every room. The manager approached Sarah, wiping sweat from his forehead. "He wants to talk to you." "Now." Sarah untied her apron and walked over to his table. "Sit," Daniel said. No arrogance this time. Just quiet curiosity. One of the men opened the folder. Inside were documents, blueprints, and photographs. One photo showed the same puzzle Sarah had solved, stamped with a government seal. "This was designed by my father," Daniel began. "He worked with the Pentagon. Brilliant man. Paranoid, but brilliant. When he died, he left me a challenge. He created 13 puzzles, each harder than the last. He said whoever could solve at least 2 of them deserved more than money. They deserved a place beside me." Sarah's eyes widened. "For 10 years, Daniel continued, over 1,000 people have tried. Engineers, scientists, programmers. All of them failed before puzzle number 2. The other man added, You're the first person to make it past puzzle 1. And you did it twice." Sarah felt lightheaded. 10 years. Thousands of people. All that money, all that effort. And she'd cracked it in under a minute. "Then why did you treat me like a fraud?" Sarah asked. Daniel looked away. When he spoke, his voice was low. "Because I wasn't ready for someone like you. Someone who didn't fit the formula." He placed a business card on the table. "Come to this address tomorrow. 9 in the morning. I want to show you something." Sarah looked at the card. It was for a tech tower downtown. The kind of building she'd only entered to clean floors. "And if I don't come?" she asked. "Then you'll stay a waitress with a wasted gift," Daniel said bluntly. Sarah held the card. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just about puzzles anymore. This was about possibility. About whether she was brave enough to step into a world that had never made room for someone like her. The building looked like something from a dream. All glass and steel, reaching up into the sky like it was trying to touch the clouds. Sarah stood at the bottom of the steps, wearing her only decent outfit, a clean shirt, dark jeans, and the same old sneakers she always wore. She felt out of place before she even walked through the door. Inside the lobby, everything was polished and perfect. The receptionist looked at her like she didn't belong. "Name?" the woman asked coldly. "Sarah," she said, handing over the card. "Just Sarah." The receptionist typed something, barely hiding her judgment, then pointed toward the elevators. 31st floor. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another world. Sarah tried to breathe slowly, tried to calm her racing heart, but everything around her screamed, "You don't belong here." When the doors opened, Daniel was waiting. No fancy suit today. Just a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "You came," he said, his voice neutral. "I still don't know why," Sarah replied honestly. "You will." He led her down a hallway into a glass-walled room with a large wooden table in the center. On it sat another device, completely different from the others. This one was simple. No lights. No buttons. Just a smooth black box with strange geometric lines carved into it. "This is box 6, Daniel said. "No one's ever made it this far. Most people quit after number 3. Sarah stepped closer. The box didn't feel like a test. It felt familiar, like something from a half-forgotten dream. "If you solve this," Daniel said slowly, "you're not just an anomaly anymore. You're a threat to everything this system believes in." Sarah touched the box. It was cold. The carvings looked decorative at first, but they weren't. Each line formed a symbol. Each symbol formed a sequence. And suddenly Sarah remembered. When she was 10 years old, her father had brought home an old book from a yard sale. It was filled with ancient Persian mathematics. She hadn't understood the words, but the shapes, the patterns, they had stayed with her all these years. She moved her hands gently across the box. Tapped 3 points. Paused. Tapped 2 more. The box buzzed softly. Daniel stood up, eyes locked on her hands. Sarah rotated the device slightly, pressed the base, then slid one panel along a hidden groove. The box opened. Clean. Silent. Perfect. Daniel didn't speak. He just stared at it like it had betrayed him. "This is based on Sufi number logic," Sarah said calmly. "It's from a Persian pattern called the Path of Light. It's more spiritual than scientific, but it's still mathematics." Daniel collapsed into his chair. "No one knew that. Not our engineers. Not our AI researchers. No one." Sarah said nothing. For the first time, she felt peaceful instead of anxious. "Where did you study?" he asked again, his voice almost desperate. "I didn't," she said softly. "I never got the chance." He looked at her differently now. Not with superiority. With something closer to awe. "You're a genius, Sarah." She gave him a sad smile. "No. I'm a poor woman no one ever bothered to call a genius." "That's not the same thing." His eyes dropped. Something inside him, the untouchable pride, the rigid certainty, cracked wide open. That afternoon, Sarah returned to her small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The walls were peeling. The air was stale. But it was home. She sat on her thin mattress and pulled out that old notebook again. Pages filled with dreams she'd given up on. No fancy teachers. No grants. No summer programs. Just her and a library card. She used to sneak into college libraries and copy entire textbooks by hand because she couldn't afford to buy them. Then her father died. Her mother got sick. And the girl who once calculated trajectories for fun became a waitress with aching feet and overdue bills. The next morning, as Sarah tied her apron behind the counter, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello, Sarah. It's Daniel." Her heart skipped. "I have one question," he said. "Why did you come back to work after yesterday?" She paused. "Because I still have rent to pay. My sister is raising 2 kids by herself, and genius doesn't pay bills when no one's looking to hire someone like me." Silence on the other end. "I want to understand you better," Daniel said. "Your story. Your mind." "Why?" "Because I've spent 10 years looking for brilliance in places that already had spotlights," he admitted. "But you? You came out of nowhere and outshined them all." Sarah almost laughed. "Maybe you just never looked in the right direction." Another pause. "Are you free tonight?" She hesitated. "It's not a date," he added quickly. "I just want to show you something important." Curiosity won. Fine. That evening, a black car picked her up. No press. No cameras. Just Daniel, quiet in the passenger seat. He took her to a restored library that had been converted into a private research facility. Inside, the brightest minds worked on complex problems, PhDs prodigies, certified geniuses. "This place," Daniel said as they walked past glass stations and tech equipment, "was built for the best of the best. I funded them, trained them, rewarded them." Sarah walked among them, watching expensive brains type codes and solve equations. "But none of them passed box 3, Daniel said quietly. "Not one. You did. And you didn't even flinch." She looked at him. "So what do you want from me?" Daniel hesitated. For the first time, his defenses dropped completely. "I want to understand what the system can't predict. I want to hear how your mind works." Sarah nodded slowly. "I'll tell you, but only if you're ready to listen. Not with your ears. Not with your ego. But with your eyes really open." He nodded. At that moment, something shifted between them. This wasn't about puzzles anymore. It was about perspective. About seeing the world differently. About understanding that brilliance doesn't only come from the places we expect. And Sarah was no longer just a waitress. She was the person who proved that genius lives everywhere, if only we bother to look. 2 weeks passed. Sarah ignored every message Daniel sent. Every call. Every invitation. She went back to her life at the restaurant, back to her routine. But something inside her had changed forever. She didn't move like a ghost anymore. She stood taller. She didn't shrink when people looked at her. Meanwhile, Daniel was falling apart. He canceled meetings, skipped events, locked himself away, watching recordings of Sarah solving the puzzles over and over again. His entire empire had been built on logic, control, and prediction. Sarah had shattered all of it with one touch. And that terrified him more than he could admit. He pulled up a file on his computer, a full background report on her. Name Sarah Mitchell. Age 28. Perfect grades until 10th grade. Dropped out after father's death. No degree. No connections. No network. She was the outlier. And outliers made him uncomfortable. "She got lucky," he muttered to himself, closing the file. But even as he said it, he knew he was lying. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work like always. But the whispers were louder now. More people pointed their phones at her. The video of her solving Daniel's puzzle had gone viral online. Her manager pulled her aside. "Sarah, you need to make a decision. Either you work here or you work with him. But not both. This place is turning into a circus." Sarah understood. But walking away from stability, even the fragile kind, was terrifying. Later that day, a text came through. 5 o'clock today. One last test. If you want to prove this isn't luck, show up. At 5 sharp, she did. Daniel was waiting in the research lab. Cold. Distant. No small talk. No warmth. "This is test 4, he said, placing a new device on the table. It was smaller, more intricate, almost alien-looking. "This one can't be solved with pattern recognition alone," he said. "It requires physics, spatial logic, vector calculations. No one's cracked it." Sarah folded her arms. "Are you trying to prove I'm stupid now?" "I'm trying to prove you got lucky," he snapped. Sarah walked up to the table. She looked at the puzzle in silence, studying it carefully. Then she began to move. Her fingers worked precisely, turning sections, adjusting components, aligning mechanisms. 2 minutes later, click. The device opened like a flower blooming. Daniel stared, breath short, jaw clenched, eyes wide. "What is your problem with me?" Sarah asked, standing tall. He looked up, startled. "I built all of this on merit," he said defensively. "Years of recruiting the best, investing in proven excellence." "No," Sarah interrupted. "You built it on control. On believing only people like you are worthy." He stood abruptly. "You think you understand everything? You don't know what it's like." "No," she cut him off, her voice rising. "But I know what it's like to be passed over. Again and again. To be brilliant and broke. To solve problems no one else can and still serve coffee to people like you." They stood in tense silence. "I don't scare you because I'm smarter," Sarah said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I scare you because I was never supposed to exist. Because your whole system is built on the idea that people like me don't have genius. That we're invisible for a reason." She picked up her bag and turned toward the door. "Sarah," Daniel called out. She didn't look back. "I'm done proving myself to you." In that moment, Daniel realized something that broke him. It wasn't Sarah's intelligence that threatened him. It was what her existence revealed about everything he'd built, everything he believed, everything he'd told himself was fair and right. For the first time in his privileged life, he felt small. 15 days. Not a word. No texts. No calls. No appearances. Sarah had vanished from his world, and Daniel felt the absence like a weight crushing his chest. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't focus. He paced his apartment late at night, rereading transcripts, watching interviews, trying to make sense of what had happened. So he showed up at the restaurant. It was a rainy Thursday morning. He walked in quietly, hood pulled low. No bodyguards. Just him. Sarah was behind the counter, restocking supplies. She looked up, saw him, and didn't flinch. "We need to talk," he said. "We really don't," she replied. "I was wrong." She didn't even blink. "And now you realize that. I was arrogant. I was proud. But you have to understand." "No," she cut him off. "You have to listen. For once in your life." The restaurant fell silent. Even the background noise faded. "You want to know who you are?" Sarah said, stepping closer. "You're everything the world told us we had to worship. Rich. Educated. Connected. Praised from birth. You grew up as the celebrated exception. I grew up as the ignored majority." He opened his mouth. Closed it. "You look at me and call me an anomaly," she continued. "A fluke. But I'm not. I'm proof that this system was never built to find people like me. It was built to keep us out." She stepped even closer. "You're not angry because I cheated. You're angry because I broke your rules. Because I wasn't in the places you searched. Because I don't speak your language. And still I beat you. Over and over again." Daniel's hands trembled. "I didn't beat you to embarrass you," Sarah said, her voice softening. "I did it because I had to. Because every time someone like me gets overlooked, a door stays locked. And I'm done waiting for someone to hand me a key." Silence. She untied her apron and placed it gently on the counter. "I'm the daughter of a factory worker who died when safety equipment failed. I taught myself physics while cleaning floors. I am the woman who solved problems you couldn't, without anyone ever teaching me how." She walked toward the door. Daniel tried to follow, but she raised her hand. "Don't offer me a job. Don't give me a condescending apology. What I needed from you, I already took. And I did it with my mind." She walked out into the rain. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. But when she left, she didn't carry pain anymore. She carried power. The headlines were brutal. By the next morning, Daniel's name was everywhere. Not for his success, but for his humiliation. Billionaire humbled by restaurant worker. The puzzle she solved and the system she exposed. Who is Sarah Mitchell? The video of their confrontation had gone viral. Millions of views. Edited, captioned, debated endlessly. Sarah became a symbol. Daniel became the punchline. Investors pulled funding. Journalists dug deeper. Think pieces flooded the internet, questioning everything Daniel had built. If she could solve what trained scientists couldn't, one article read, "What does that say about how we define intelligence?" Daniel stopped answering calls. He retreated into isolation, watching the empire he'd clung to dissolve one article at a time. For the first time in his life, he had no defense. No explanation. No way to spin this. Then he made a decision that would change everything. He walked into the main hall of his research center, unannounced. His staff looked up in shock. Some stared with resentment. Others with silent curiosity. "We're shutting the program down," Daniel said calmly. Gasps. Murmurs. Confusion. He stood firm. "The puzzles don't prove intelligence. They were built to feed my father's ego, and mine. We've been measuring the wrong things all along." He paused, letting that sink in. "The center will be renamed. Its mission will change. No more IQ filters. No more university requirements. I want raw brilliance. Kids from schools that never got computers. Adults who taught themselves on broken phones. I want people like Sarah." He tapped his phone. The screen behind him changed. Project Sarah. A new way to see genius. No one clapped. No one cheered. But a young scientist in the back, a woman from a small town who'd fought her way into that room, smiled. Meanwhile, across the city, Sarah walked through the streets carrying groceries for her sister. Her steps were steady. Calm. She hadn't heard from Daniel in weeks, and she didn't expect to. Her phone buzzed. A single message. No words. Just a photo. A glass sign being installed on the front of a building. Project Sarah, Center for Invisible Genius. Sarah stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. She stared at the screen for a long moment. She didn't cry. She didn't post about it. She just stood there and whispered to herself. "I didn't disappear. I shifted the whole map." Seasons changed. The buzz around the viral video faded. But Sarah remained, not in headlines, not in magazines, but in the real world where it mattered. Every morning, she returned to the same restaurant. Not in a uniform anymore, but as herself. She'd sit by the window with a notebook, sometimes writing, sometimes just watching people. She felt at peace. She had redefined what it meant to win. She didn't want a CEO title. She didn't need millions of followers. She just wanted to live with truth and make space for others to do the same. One Saturday, walking through the park, she saw something that made her stop. A crowd of kids and teenagers gathered on the grass, working on tablets and puzzles, led by young instructors wearing shirts that read, "Project Sarah, Intelligence Lives Everywhere." She watched from a distance, smiling. One girl, maybe 12 years old, solved a math problem in seconds. "I used to think I was dumb," the girl said to her instructor. "But here, they show you different ways to learn. I'm not dumb. I just needed the right key." Sarah felt tears press against her eyes. A coordinator spotted her. "Hey, are you Sarah? The real Sarah?" She nodded shyly. The kids erupted in applause. Not because she was famous, but because she was proof. Proof that someone like them could be more than what the world expected. That night, back in her apartment, Sarah sat by the window with a book. There was a soft knock at the door. It was Daniel. He looked older somehow. Quieter. No longer the billionaire in a suit. Just a man holding 2 coffees and an envelope. "May I come in?" he asked gently. She nodded. They sat on the floor together. No pretense. No tension. Just presence. He handed her the envelope. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Young people in classrooms. Women in labs. Adults in second chance programs. Each marked with a sticker, accepted. No degree required. "They're the first class," Daniel said softly. "Your class, really." She stared at the photos for a long time. "They don't need to know who I am." "They already do," he replied. "You gave them permission to exist." Silence filled the room like a warm blanket. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. She smiled. "Live simply. Help my sister. Maybe write a book. Teach if anyone wants to learn. Can I read the book when it's done?" She laughed. Really laughed. "Only if you promise not to skip to the end." He He raised his coffee cup. She raised hers. They clinked them together gently. Two people who once stood on opposite ends of the world now shared something deeper than status or intellect. Understanding. In that quiet moment, Sarah knew something profound. Sometimes the most powerful change isn't what you build. It's what you unblock for others. Time continued to move. Leaves fell. Winter came. New students joined Project Sarah centers across the country. And slowly, the world changed, not with fireworks, but with seeds planted deep. Sarah Mitchell became something rare, a legend who never asked to be famous. She refused interviews, turned down awards, declined corporate offers. "I don't need to be celebrated," she once said. "I need the system to stop skipping people like me." Her name appeared on plaques, in murals, in applications. But Sarah stayed where she belonged, walking to the corner store, helping her sister with groceries, sitting in classrooms where her face had never been welcome before. As for Daniel, he learned to disappear with grace. He handed control to community leaders and educators. He mentored in silence. No cameras. No suits. And sometimes, they'd meet at that restaurant where it all began. Two people who had torn down walls and chosen to stay. Not for need, not for show, but because they had seen each other fully. Sarah Carter was the kind of genius no one saw coming. And the kind of change the world needed most. The end.